We have been itching to do this for a long time now, and I'm so happy that we're getting the chance to basically do this. But my good friend, and of course, I don't want to be a big time spoiler, but we've also got some stuff in the works that'll be exciting for all of you Charger fans up out there. But this is the spotlight for Detroit Lion fans. You guys love Detroit Lions. What a hell of a year. This is definitely the guy that produces the content for those Detroit Lions. I'm excited to bring him on. So, welcoming in Derrick from Lion Syndicate here via the Global Satellite Network, presented by Stream. This was an interesting year, but I want to see from your perspective, because you covered this team for a very long time. This was, I'd say this was arguably the greatest year in the state of Michigan. I mean, the Wolverines win a natty, and then the Detroit Lions, what were the chances they were going to make it into the NFC Championship? Going from your experience and covering this team, because you've seen a bunch of these teams with Detroit for over the years, this has to arguably from its history, probably the best team you've ever seen covering this team. Am I right?
Yes, Jake, you are right, man. Being a teenager in 1992 when the Lions went on their last run, I don't remember much of that. Barry Sanders, Herman Moore, Brett Perriman, those guys, Johnny Morton. But this year, man, was completely different. We did something that we hadn't done in 30 plus years, which the Detroit Lions have only so many playoff wins in their entire history. And this was only the first time in 32 years that we were able to win a playoff game. Not only that, we had never won the NFC North, so that's another milestone. We hosted a playoff game at Ford Field, another milestone. So this was by far the greatest kind of run that I can remember seeing from my team. And it's tough, man, the way it ended. You know, we were up 17 points. I remember getting a DM from you like, hey, man, soak it all up. And I remember telling everybody at halftime that this thing isn't over. This is the number one team in the NFC. We got to give them all they have. And I don't know what happened, man, but I mean, overall, I'm proud. I'm excited, but I'm also severely disappointed because we could have got that monkey off our back, Jake. We are one of 4 teams, this, man, to never appear in the Super Bowl. And we were 30 minutes away. It's tough, bro. But I know we got to pick up the pieces and move on. But it doesn't diminish what happened during the season. That's for sure,
folks. But so basically, okay. So going back to Dan Campbell, Dan Campbell has basically done something no other Lions coach has basically done. I mean, we're talking from Rod Marinelli to Jim Caldwell to a lot of different Lions coaches, even Matt Patricia and many others. But I've defended Dan Campbell for a few reasons, because one, he's authentic. Mm-hmm. He's real. He is what he is. He's emotionally driven. You could see that with him. And players love him as far as a culture setter and as somebody that's very invested in what he does. Now, we can make the argument he does have really good coordinators. Now, Aaron Glenn, it's questionable about where he stands in his future, but we can honestly say, I don't condemn him with basically the call that he made of going on it on fourth down, because he's mostly been doing this.
Right.
How would you describe, Dan Campbell, and especially with the 2 years he spent in Detroit, and how much of his presence has really reshaped of what the culture is in this Lions organization?
Well, I think you said it the best, Jake. The authenticity of Dan Campbell is probably his number one trait. All the players this offseason and during the season were saying how good it is to play for him, how you're going to get the real Dan Campbell, and that Jared Goff called him the greatest leader he's ever been around. And that's because of not only his authenticity, but the way he goes about his coaching. And from hard knocks to, kneecaps and all this other stuff, man, Dan Campbell is truly Detroit. And even though he spent just a small fraction of his career here, he was on our team, although he was injured when we went 0-16. And that type of guy, that type of player that was part of that, even though he didn't physically participate, is somebody that we really could use, man, to change the culture around. So Dan Campbell, and like you said, man, and with me, I'm okay with one of the calls. I'm not okay with the other one. And I think, but like, that's Dan Campbell. You live and die by him. And he's done that the whole time he's been here. And I just hope that going forward, he's able to kind of, I don't know, man, tone it down a little bit, take the points. If in games like this is a one and done situation. So that's my coach. I still back him, not agreeing with every call that he made this past Sunday, but it is what it is, man. But as far as the culture, Jake, he is Detroit, and I wouldn't have it any other way, tell you the truth.
It's funny about that because, and I use this as a perfect example, but looking at Nick Sirianni, last year he was in the Super Bowl. This year, the Eagles had a 10-1 start, and then all of a sudden they just had the most massive collapse in 1-6. And so now they get new coordinators, and they're kind of taking a mulligan from this season, and they're hoping he works. That's kind of what it is. At least with Dan Campbell is that he's got great coordinators. And I think the lucky saving thing is that Ben Johnson's staying put, because I couldn't imagine it without Ben Johnson. But I think part of that reason is there is a lot of uncertainty. You don't know what could possibly happen in Seattle or Washington. So the best thing to do was, hey, we'll give you your pay raise, but you are part of this culture. And I think that's the best thing that could happen. So going to it, you know what, Jared Goff, I want to say this. Jared Goff, when he came in out of NorCal, okay, he was a pure thrower in the pocket, probably the last pocket passing quarterback that I think we've seen now in the NFL. But a lot of the narrative is they're like, oh, Sean McVay's the reason Jared Goff got to a Super Bowl. Well, he changed that whole narrative the second he came to Detroit. And thanks to Matt Stafford doing them a solid with that trade. But I think arguably you look at Jared Goff, he had a great postseason. He never threw a pick. Yep. He was very consistent from that point on. How impressed of the growth have you seen with Jared Goff? And has he really kind of turned into that franchise quarterback instead of being, well, he's just a quarterback from a different system? How did you feel with that?
Well, you know what, Jake? I always was supportive of Jared Goff when he came over. As a matter of fact, when I heard that the Rams were interested, I said in a video that the only way I take that trade is if Jared Goff is part of it, because I watched a lot of Rams games and I'm like, this guy is not a throwaway quarterback. And I think the worst part about Jared Goff is that year one, that he was blindsided by the entire trade. He didn't even know he was traded until the deal was already done. I used to call him a strange man in a strange land over here. And we had some dudes on our team, man, that were, we were working with little to nothing. And Jared Goff still showed a lot of promise in year one. And I think now that he's got his confidence back, he's comfortable. He knows these guys. He didn't know them. He didn't know Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, anyone on the team. But these guys all came in here together, and I think they feed off of each other. And I think Jared Goff, he said that he would love to stay here. He feels like this is his home. He loves the city. He knows what the franchise means to the city, and he wants to be part of that. So Jared Goff, man, always believed in him. I'm glad he had a fantastic year. I'm just disappointed that we were unable to get to the Super Bowl, but I believe in him, bro. Even when we drafted Hendon Hooker, I was not like, Jared Goff is on his way out the door. I've always said we were going to extend him, and now it seems like he's 100% going to get extended. So I'm happy. I just can't wait till he got to the Super Bowl with the Rams, Jake. Now he can win it with the Lions, and that's what I want to see for JG.
It's so funny because I loved watching that game between him and the Rams, and the fact that, Matt Stafford comes back to the place where he left it all up on the field. And he was also, too, before Dan Campbell got there, he was the pure example of what all grit and all heart looked like. He sacrificed his body out on the field to basically ensure the Lions were going to win that game. But it's funny because I say it this way. Detroit is not going to go anywhere. I think the NFC, and I explained about this, about San Francisco, if this is the time to win the Super Bowl, now it is. Because the NFC, you got Green Bay knocking on the door. They finally have a franchise quarterback in Jordan Love. You've got Detroit, that's all about grit, and they've got fantastic players, and they hit 6 draft picks, which is insanity. And they're just getting started. And then there's also the Eagles that are hoping they bounce back from what their season was. Looking at this roster is so young. Penei Sewell, Sam Laporta, Aiden Hutchinson, and Jahmyr Gibbs. And you want to know something that's really interesting, and I'd like your opinion on it, but David Montgomery was the steal of the free agent market, and he ran great. He was a lot more efficient. Going into this offseason, I don't think there's really any massive holes that the Detroit Lions have other than the fact of I could use another corner and safety.
Yeah.
I could probably use maybe one more linebacker, but the rest of this, I'd be adding some depth. What's your outlook in the offseason?
Well, you know what, Jake? We had, like I said, year one was abysmal, and the whole team was just throwaway guys from other teams. And we knew going into the this offseason or the past offseason, that the secondary was a cause for concern. So Brad Holmes, he goes out and he drafts Brian Branch. He brings in CJ Gardner-Johnson, Emmanuel Mosley, Cam Sutton. I mean, revamp the secondary, drafted a linebacker in Jack Campbell in the first round. Now he must address the defensive line, pass rush, interior pass rush. He has to do that. That is the number one priority for me. We have to get a number one corner. I don't believe Cam Sutton is a number one, very solid number two, but he was also on some of the toughest opponents in the league, and he did pretty well defending them. We have to get a pass rush. So one of my number one candidates, I know we'll never get him, is Josh Allen from the Jacksonville Jaguars, but this is Brad Holmes' time. He's going to have the most money he's ever had. He's going to have, he likes to trade up in the draft, so we'll see what he does there. The offense is essentially built. We could use a lineman here and there, but now he has to attack the defense. And I think the first thing we do is a defensive lineman, and then we branch out to the secondary. So if we can get our hands on somebody like Danielle Hunter or Brian Burns, I mean, you never know what happens with Josh Allen, even an AJ Epinesa in free agency. I think that would go a long way to helping out that secondary, but we've definitely got to do defensive line and then attack that secondary as well.
Could I also make the argument that there could be a possibility, if need be, if it was basically, worst came to worst, could it also be that maybe potentially Chase Young might end up coming into a system like what Detroit has with Aiden Hutchinson?
Now, you know what, man? Here's the thing. We had an opportunity. Chase Young was big on my list at the trade deadline. He was the one that financially and draft wise, as far as capital, I figured would fit. And then I heard San Francisco got him for a compensatory third round pick. But the knock on Chase Young that I've been seeing from people is that he might not play all the way through. Now, if they sign Chase Young in free agency, I would be a bit surprised, because I don't know if he was on Brad's list. I think he fits the mold as in affordability. But one thing that Dan Campbell said in his season-ending presser a couple of days ago was, it doesn't matter how much talent you have, if you don't fit as far as what we're trying to do in character and personality, you won't be on this team. And that told me a lot about how they're going to attack the future. Not sure Chase Young is the guy that fits on this team. Would I be mad if we got him for little or nothing? I wouldn't be, because we need all the help we could get. So if we miss out on a Josh Allen, a Brian Burns, a Danielle Hunter, a AJ Epinesa, and we trickle down to Chase, I wouldn't be mad at that. But I tell you what, he's going to have the best year of his career here, or he won't be here very long. So I think that's the knock there. But Chase Young, man, I wouldn't be opposed, because he was my number one candidate at the trade deadline.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny, because looking at him currently with San Francisco, and San Francisco's got dudes.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing is that I think, when you got to have depth, especially when a guy goes down, it's the next man up mentality. And I think, honestly, if you give him for an affordable price, and at the same time, you're not paying him so much, but you're still able to basically reload and revamp in the draft. You could possibly make an argument and make a case, hey, we're not asking you to basically be like what you were in San Francisco. We're asking you to just give your dog mentality. We want to see that Ohio State kid that we saw coming into the draft that is going to basically fit our system. So it's not bad to basically have for a depth. But
absolutely, because Aiden Hutchinson needs some help as well. So we have nobody, Jake, 0 people on that other side.
Yeah, and what's funny is I want to talk Jahmyr Gibbs.
Okay.
People were saying that Jahmyr Gibbs was literally a reach for Detroit. After I watched him this rookie season, I think some writers are probably shooting themselves in the foot right now. I love watching Jahmyr Gibbs, and with that duo running back set is so dangerous because Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, kind of almost reminds me and has that mirroring image of an Isaiah Pacheco in the late round. He's a guy that is fast on his feet. He's a guy that even if you brought so much toughness to him and you try to tackle him, he's looking for that. He's expecting that. And he's going to basically punch through any defensive line that comes through there. How impressed were you basically watching Jahmyr Gibbs? And can we make the argument? And this is what's funny. No Detroit Lion weapon has basically scored at least big time up in a touchdown in games like this. Could you make the argument Jahmyr Gibbs is a lot better than we thought he was coming in the draft?
Well, you know what, man? I personally, I made videos about this because I knew Swift, his time, he was on the last year of his contract, and I knew you could just kind of tell by his play he just seemed like he didn't want to be here. So I started looking at other running backs, and I see this kid named Jahmyr Gibbs, and I'm like, this guy is a home run hitter. So when we trade, we had the 6th pick from the Rams, and that comes and goes. We trade back. Jahmyr is still sitting on the board, and I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if we trade Jahmyr Gibbs. And when we did, I was ecstatic because I knew that this kid was exactly what he did, bro. He played exactly like I thought he was. The only thing that I can't believe didn't happen is he didn't break one long. I believe, I'm like, man, but I think what's going to happen is he learned so much his rookie season. I think he's going to come out and we're going to see that next year. But I love this kid. I was not disappointed at all. He did not disappoint. He was the reason that we won a lot of these games because David Montgomery was out for, I want to say 3 games, and he carried the team. Could he carry the team if he had to be the leading rusher? The answer was yes. So, I mean, and I feel bad for him, bro, because he fumbled in this game this last Sunday, and it was a crucial fumble, and I know he's going to live with that for, I mean, what a rookie year to have. Like, you kill it, and then that's how you end the season with a costly fumble. So I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get even more impressive as the year goes on.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? And you're absolutely right about that, which was kind of crazy because, and here's how I kind of break this down. One and then one last one. But the crazy thing is if I was Dan Campbell, and I'm going back to that game, and the thing about this is Detroit was arguably one of the best first half offenses I think we've seen now. And honestly, in all of the NFL, Ben Johnson is so damn good, and eventually he will get a head coaching gig. I think this was the best thing to basically come back, retain your job as an offensive coordinator because there's unfinished business. Mm-hmm. We can argue that, God, they're putting up almost close to 27 points in the first half per game. And it's you see the explosiveness. They run so efficiently. But I think at the same time, his play design is so creative. But to going into that game, I think, and what was the crucial spot that I think when defending Dan Campbell is you had 1:59 left in that fourth quarter. Take the field goal. Mm-hmm. You had plenty of time, and you got plenty of timeouts to basically go back, kick the ball off to San Francisco, and then force a 3-and-out.
Yep.
Get the ball back, and then you can make a big play. I mean, that's kind of how I saw it situationally. Do you agree with that kind of thought? Because honestly, I think any coach will tell you that if you got time on and you got timeouts, I'd rather just take the points, know that I got plenty of time, only 2-minute drill, and get a 3-and-out, and then give myself an opportunity to score. Because this almost felt like we're back in Dallas again. But I don't condemn him of his toughness, but is that do you agree with that kind of thought? Is this kind of the same thing you were probably thinking?
Yes, I'm up in the stands and I'm watching and I'm saying, well, he's got to take the 3 here because this is our last shot. There's no way we're going to score twice in 2 minutes if we don't take these points. And he's sitting there going for them. What is happening here? We didn't get it. And then we wind up losing by 3. So you know what, man, I think Dan Campbell is weird because I think he was in season mode, and the postseason is a different beast. You cannot lose games. You lose games, you go home. So I think that the press conference afterward, you could tell that his mindset, sometimes I think he needs to adjust it based on the situation. And this was not the time. Take the 3 points, kick it deep if you want to, try an onside kick. Worst case scenario, they kick a field goal. Best case scenario, we stop them and get it back. But instead, you put your offense behind the A ball there, and it is unfortunate, man, because I'm gonna be honest with you, Jake. It was tough for me to get on today. And if you would have done this any earlier, I don't know if I could have done it, because it's been so tough we should be in the Super Bowl and we're not. And then, it's tough, man. But I agree 100%. And I tell you what, I think Dan Campbell, one thing I can say is every year he's grown as a coach. And I think this year is no different. I think he's going to go into year 4 even better than year 3. And surprisingly enough, his contract is he's on the second half of it. So we'll be talking about extensions for both of those guys very soon. But that's my guy. He understands the city, the team. He is the city, the team. He's still in that kind of like infant stage to me. Lot of growth he needs to do. But I go to war with this guy, man. He's definitely my coach.
Absolutely. And I think the future is absolutely bright in Detroit. And it now they're basically pinning like, look, we have rewritten our history. 30 years ago, yeah, it was a laughing stock, and even longer than that. But this time right now, and like I love the fact that culture setters are so rare to come by.
Yeah.
Dan Campbell comes in, changes the culture. D'Amico Ryans comes in, changes the culture. Jim Harbaugh now is in LA. He's going to change the culture, and you're already seeing it right now.
Yeah.
So I think this is the perfect opportunity for Detroit, and I am happy for them. One last thing before letting you go and getting you some much needed rest. So Ben Johnson, as I've said before, he will eventually become an NFL head coach. I kind of see him in the same level plateau as what I saw with Shane Steichen. I think respectfully. But I think, and maybe you might be able to kind of go in the shoes of Ben Johnson. I think he's probably thinking, yes, the uncertainty. We don't know. I don't know who my quarterback will be in Washington. I don't know if I'm going to be able to really revamp Geno Smith. I may have to go and either trade or draft a quarterback. So the best option was to stay put. But I think it's more than that. I think you look at this season, about 27 points in the first half per game. But yet in the second half, things kind of slowed down. Is that maybe something that was lingering in Ben Johnson's head and basically saying, not only am I getting the raise, but I got to fix up my second half team? Was that kind of something that was lingering in his head that kind of pushed him more to stay with Detroit?
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised if it was, man, because I feel like just like the rest of the team, you got Josh Reynolds dropping passes, Jahmyr fumbling, that Ben thought he left something on the table. And all year long, the third quarter has been a problem for the offense. And I was telling everybody, our offense is what carried us all year long. If the offense slipped up at all, we lost. And that's what happened in San Francisco. So you could be on to something. I know he was on the St. Brown Brothers podcast, and he talked to his wife, and him and his wife had a conversation. He said, I love it here. I love it here. Sometimes the grass is not always greener on the other side, Jake. So I think that he wants to finish what he started. He said the same thing last year. He also got a raise last year. But I think that this is a guy that wants to see this thing through, and he can tell that we're getting close. We're getting close. But absolutely, he's going to also take into the 2024 season and saying, you know what? We pretty much can dominate the first half. We've got to get this third quarter thing out, because then we get behind, Jake, and then we're playing a shootout at the end, and we have to score, set 14 points in 5 minutes to win games. And so I think that maybe that was a reason that he said, you know what, let me get my third quarter together, especially if he's going to be a head coach in the next couple of years. He wants to get that under his belt. So I never thought about that, man, about maybe that's something he doesn't want to leave on the table either, because that's a lot of reasons. The games that we did lose outside of the Baltimore Ravens, it's got something to do with that third quarter, man. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's it, man.
It's funny because, even when you look at young coaches, I mean, I'm kind of curious to see what Mike McDonald will do in Seattle. But, again, you go guns blazing as a young coach. And I get it. You come from a reputation where you're a creative offensive mind. But if the narrative was basically, he's only just a first half offensive coordinator, then that's probably where you're probably thinking, you know what, I got to change that. I don't want to be just a one half guy. I want to be the whole damn thing. And I think that's probably the best narrative you could sum up about Ben Johnson. But I'm excited about this team. This team has a bright future. They're not going anywhere. This is at a point now, if you were looking at a Super Bowl window, I think it's open now.
Yeah.
I think people can convince themselves this window is open and it's only going to get better as long as Dan does learn from that mistake. Never change your way. Stay authentic and stay real, but be even smarter. And that is where the extensions will start to talk.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you jumping on here, Derrick. Where can people find you, especially all diehard Detroit Lions fan, for the magical year they've had in 30 years? Where can people find all of your great content?
You can find me at Lions Fan Syndicate or Lions Syndicate, Detroit Lions Syndicate. All you got to do is start typing Lions SYN, and then my channel will pop up. Just hit 19,000 over there. We make content every day because we're diehard Lions fans. And even in this pain, we should be talking about the Super Bowl. Now we're talking about the offseason. We still got content coming out. So that's where you can find me if you are a Detroit Lions fan.
See, what's funny about that is that even with the result not being what it wanted to be, but you know what? Congrats to 19,000 subscribers. And it's still on the grind, man, because if we could get to 20,000, before the end of 24, that'd be amazing. But you know what? Even in a hard loss like this, there is always a bittersweet ending in the end. And so
I'll be there by the Super Bowl, Jake. I'm already at 19.1. So I'll be at 20,000 and I'll come back and put it in your chat in 2 weeks.
See, there you go. There you go.
It's been a pleasure, my man.
Absolutely. And for all diehard Charger fans up out there, just a quick wrap up as well. We've got something brewing up as well as for all you Charger fans who want diehard content and who want reasonable takes and analysis. Charger Syndicate is going to be coming out real soon. Stay tuned for that, guys. It's going to be amazing, and I cannot wait for the opportunity. Thank you for the opportunity, man.
Thank you, man.
Appreciate you coming on, man. Enjoy it, and I hope you feel better soon, man. Get some well-needed rest, and we'll definitely talk soon.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.